Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Tonight is going to be mostly updates. Want to start out with some good news and some frustrating news. The good news is you guys may have noticed that Susie has been joining us a lot and has been on a lot of the email threads. And one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time was getting an assistant city administrator. And Cheryl did some reconfiguration of her group. It saved the city a ton of money and also provided promotional opportunities for some of the employees to give them a little more of a career path. And as we know, the two bond issues that we have, the road bond and the capital improvement bond, are going to require a lot of management on our end. So Susie has been promoted. I don't know what her title is now, but she's going to be working with us a lot to help us manage all of these various projects that we've got going on. So congratulations to her. What's your new title, Susie?
Thank you. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development.
Okay, so congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
On that.
It's gonna be fun.
Yep.
Go, Susie.
So we are glad to have her, and it's great to have another body from the administration helping us out. So that is awesome. The frustrating piece, and I only mention this just because as committee members, you might get hit up by residents on this. I know I have already, but last week, I know Mike Keenan knows this, social media was running rampant about our capital improvement bond. Kind of the same old with people not active in the process, and then once decisions are made, they start lobbing hand grenades. Their biggest complaint was a lack of transparency, and they felt that we kind of snuck in this bond under the radar, which is pretty laughable in my opinion, considering the fact that we had 3 infrastructure meetings. This was talked about at least 4 city council study sessions, 2 city council meetings, 2 or 3 planning commission meetings. We did a town hall on it. All of those meetings were announced on our Facebook site, on our website, on our weekly newsletter, on our villagers site, and then all of the meetings were videoed and posted. So if we were keeping a secret, we were not doing the best job of keeping a secret. So there was also some negative stuff about again, misinformed, but negative stuff about the promotions, and then there was a big misrepresentation of the bond council's recommendation as far as the largest amount that we could politically tolerate, from the perspective of you don't want to have to go back to the voter or to the residents a second time for more money, so make sure you get enough. You don't have to spend it, but make sure you get enough. And that was misconstrued, even though it was very clearly spelled out in the recommendation. It was used as us having an agenda and trying to, in order to satisfy that agenda, jacking up the water bill as much as we possibly could. So, you guys, I just wanted to, we don't get a chance to talk as a group, so I wanted to make sure you guys are all aware of that. I know Mike Keenan was great in trying to provide, fact and context to a lot of the stuff, but it really didn't help. I couldn't jump in because we're not allowed to answer on those kinds of posts. But you may get hit up by residents. Again, I know I've been stopped walking the dogs a couple times with people asking questions about it and so forth. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So questions on either of those 2 things? Okay, so the first
I guess I must have missed all that because I didn't see all that. So.
Oh yeah, it was the same old. It was, I think last I checked, I think there were like 60 comments on the post. And it was a lot of it. Like I said, it's a lot of the usual, people not being active and not knowing what's going on, and then getting upset when they do see what's going on. So okay, so first thing we want to talk about is the sidewalk and trees. So let me start out by giving a little bit of an update, and then I'll turn it over to Susie and Cheryl to correct all my mistakes and then bring Judd into the conversation a little bit. He's got a little bit that he wants to talk about as well. So we had a meeting yesterday, Susie, Cheryl, myself, and the two Scotts about the sidewalk program. So we're moving forward with that, as you guys know. We did decide on the business corridor we were supposed to do last summer. We couldn't get to it for a variety of reasons. So we're doing the business corridor this year, and then we were going to do one quadrant of the city this year. And so what we decided to do is do actually the two quadrants, since they're both small quadrants south of 696. So those will be the three areas for the sidewalk program.
I have a quick question, Bruce, if I could.
Yeah.
Is that going to include the area in front of the high school, the old high school? On 12 Mile?
No, that's not. We discussed just doing businesses along Southfield Road for this initial year, and then when we handle the east and west quadrants respectively north, that's when we'll get to the north and the 12 and 11 mile.
But that
addresses
will eventually be done along 12 Mile there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There's some pretty uneven areas there.
Yeah. Okay, so at the council meeting on Monday, we're going to issue the notice of advisability, which kicks off the special assessment process. We'll also set the first public hearing for the March 15th council meeting, and then the second public hearing will be in April, and then we can begin work on it. What we did decide was we talked about just doing 1 year for the payment, but given the millage and the COVID situation and everything else, we wanted to give residents make it as palatable as something like this that nobody wants to spend money on can be. And so what we did is we're going to spread the payment out over 2 years. Letters are going to go out as soon as possible. So hopefully within the next week, alerting those residents who have flags that need to be repaired and letting them know that they have until April 1st to respond to us and tell us whether or not they want to do the work themselves or have the city contractor do it. The cost, at least half the cost, will go on the July 2021 taxes, again split over 2 years. Yeah, and then we'll get to the trees. We need to have a little bit of a discussion about city trees. But Susie, Cheryl, anything I missed? Scott, anything I missed on that? Okay. All right. So then the only issue that we have left is really a lot of the flags that are displaced are due to city trees, and we kind of open up the discussion. I think as a committee, we've talked a little bit about this a year or so ago, and I think at that point we said that it's still the residents. The ordinance says it's the resident's responsibility, regardless if it's a city tree that's causing the issue. But as we talked about it yesterday, we were kind of open that up for discussion again, and we're going to talk about this at the city council study session on Monday. But the question then is does the city pay for the root grinding or removal that's causing the the displacement? And so did want to bring that up here so we could have a discussion about it, because as we have the meeting at the study session on Monday, I can at least convey the feelings of the body here. And then, I guess let me bring Judd into it here at this point, talk a little bit about the roots and some of the things that they've done in other cities and communities and so forth.
Thank you, Bruce. Pardon me for reading to you, but I think the best way for me to be succinct and direct to the point is I have a presentation that obviously I would read to all of you if we were all together. And like I say, I hate reading to you, but since the public's involved in this, I think it's the best way for me to articulate my feelings. Members of the Planning Commission, Lathrup Village residents, for those of you that don't, I haven't had the pleasure to meet, my name is Judd Hart. My company, J.H. Hart Urban Forestry, has contracted to take care of the village trees since 2009. We have predominantly performed a demand tree maintenance, including tree trimming, tree and stump removal, plant health care, and consulting to some of the Parks and Rec situations with Chris. Basically, with responding to requests from the Department of Public Service to handle concerns or issues stemming from residents or DPS employees. Currently, the city of Lathrup Village does not have any preventative maintenance program designed to help care for the trees as they mature and get in front of potential concerns. Please keep in mind, as trees age and decline, they become more prone to failure. Budget constraints have prevented the village from moving forward with preventative maintenance program. 66% of the calls coming into the Department of Public Service front office are tree and trash related. Lathrup Village's residents love their trees and clearly hate their garbage. Cheryl recently brought this planning meeting to my attention and mentioned the sidewalks were being discussed. Sidewalks can be a sensitive topic as they typically don't mesh well with mature trees. At some point, uneven sidewalks are obvious hazards, and it's common for large trees to be removed to accommodate new sidewalks. Complete removal becomes necessary because root pruning and removal affects the tree's stability, which is clearly not acceptable from a safety standpoint. Unfortunately, tough decisions will need to be made relative to some of the trees within the sidewalk program. This brings me to a concept I spoke to Cheryl about. We started a block trimming program in Hazel Park in conjunction with their sidewalk replacement program. The concept is simple. Approximately a year prior to the designated section scheduled for sidewalk replacement, we simply come in and trim and remove trees as needed. The goal is to provide clear access for the sidewalk crew and remove hazardous trees before they cause damage to people and or sidewalks. Very detailed planning and evaluating is done at each and every stage, and trees are assessed accordingly. One of the things that I think it's important for all of us to think a little bit about is, and we've seen them in other communities, is everybody familiar with the half moon process in a sidewalk? So try to imagine that sidewalk in a heritage or a landmark tree comes up there. We clearly have a sidewalk problem, and then you would have like a half moon that would go around the tree. And those are options for us to do if the tree is a landmark or a heritage tree. I'm a tree lover, so I'm totally in favor of trying to save those trees, but 46% of our tree population in our row trees are silver maples. Silver maples are the only softwood maple tree in the maple family, and they are very prone to old age, decline, cavity rot, and catastrophic failures, especially in the condition that our trees are in, because they just aren't maintained. It is very difficult to quantify a budget right now due to the current weather conditions. J.H. Hart is a time and material contractor to the village. We work for you on an hourly rate, only charging you for the crew and equipments that are deployed and requested. I wanted to speak to you tonight about the concept of in general and offer the opportunity to answer any questions. And I guess in closing, before I ask for questions, I just want you to understand that we spend between $46,000 and $54,000 a year on our demand maintenance program historically through the 11 years that I've been managing the forest. I think it's unrealistic for us to start a sidewalk program and think that those dollars that we spend, we barely get stuff done at the money that we spend now. It's going to get worse with the sidewalk program because there's going to be larger trees that have to come down. This would be an opportunity for us to begin a block trimming program in a very systematic and slower process where we could perhaps quantify a budget for a geographic area that is having the sidewalks done and do the block trimming program in conjunction with that. In Hazel Park, and Susie, maybe you can expand on this, because I know you talked to Tom Jones. I recommended that Cheryl and Susie talk to Tom Jones, because we've had a great success rate within Hazel Park in doing it this way. And it takes not necessarily us doing an entire section, but maybe half of a section, or just a baby step for us to get into a block trimming program for our row trees. And with that, I'll just turn it back over to you, Bruce, and whatever you'd like me to do from here forward.
Yeah, I think one of Judd's concerns is that, you know, if you especially with primary root, if you grind it, I mean, most of the contractors that, you know, and Scott Ringler mentioned that most of the contractors, you know, provide for sidewalks will provide some type of grinding service. But, you know, Judd's concern is that, you know, especially if it's a primary root, you know, that can add to instability of the tree. So, but Susie, did you want to mention anything about the Hazel Park program? I know you've been talking to them.
Yeah, I talked to Tom. We had a nice long conversation today about what they, you know, what they've been doing. They've been doing this with Judd for like 4 or 5 years, I think he said. And they had started off their whole sidewalk program long before. It was actually started in the 80s, kind of went away and then came back. And they started the tree maintenance program because they realized, like, a few years into restarting their sidewalk replacement program, that they weren't really dealing with the issues. You know, they were coming in and be like, "What do we want?" and just kind of cut down trees if that's what they felt they needed. And it was, you know, they were getting a lot of pushback, surprise from the residents about that. So then that's when they started partnering with Judd and, you know, going through. And what they've done is they've broken Hazel Park out into 12 sectors, and they've been making their way through each of those sectors. I think you mentioned he's on sector 7 now. So and what they would do is they'd go through, Judd and his crew would take that first look at it, assess the trees, figure out, you know, what trees needed to come down. Tom would go back and do this, you know, a second look over, you know, do we agree, disagree? And then, you know, once they agreed upon it, they would, you know, notices get sent out. So, you know, Tom said that they've even refined it a little further with their notification. Like, it just used to be a letter, and then, you know, inevitably you get a renter that's like, I know nothing, you know, the property owner knows nothing. And so they've enhanced their notification process, door hangers, letters. And then what they do is after they've taken that section, they go back through that section and they break it down into smaller chunks for the sidewalks. And so they're constantly, they've trimmed it, they've maintained what needs to be maintained in that section, and that's the section they go through and they repair for the sidewalks. So he said so far it's been pretty good, no complaints. And their letters to their residents are, you know, they detail, like, hey, this is why. It's not like, hey, we assessed your tree, it needs to come down. Like, they give them some details so that they can kind of head off that argument of, well, there's nothing wrong with my tree. Well, you probably missed the giant gaping hole that's rotting out from the center, like that kind of stuff. So
well, they also follow that up with a tree planting program, but they've
yeah.
got some type of grant
Yeah.
help defray the cost of those trees.
Yeah, he was not super clear on where they got it, but it was big. I mean, it's like a really big foundation grant, and I've never, like, I mean, I want to say, like, I swear he said something about 90,000. I was like, that sounds enormous for. Is it okay? Do you know where he got that grant from, or where the city
it's the best kept secret in town.
Then I know then I have a very good idea of where they got those dollars. So, let's just say they've got some new uses in Hazel Park that are eager to show the community some love. So, that's how they're funding that.
If I could interject.
What's that?
Just if I could interject, Hazel Park has been riddled, not riddled, but they're predominantly used to be a rental, a rental community. And just to remind us all as well, their typical row trees are sandwiched between the sidewalk and the street by about 4 to 4.5 feet. So any mature tree, not only does it take out the sidewalk, it's usually doing something to the street and the curb as well. So those components, the demographics or the residents have become more of a live in the house type of a scenario, where before it was a rental. And so when we started out the program, we didn't get nearly as much pushback as we did more recently, because those houses have now become owner occupied. We don't have that. I don't believe, let me rephrase that. I don't believe that we have that component in Lathrup. I think our residents probably live in the houses that,
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's a safe bet. So we're going to get a backlash from taking anything down. You need to have the confidence, which you already have in me and Cheryl has in me and the previous administrations, to make sure that I love trees and I'm not in the business of taking them down. I could make a lot more money taking care of the trees over 20 years than taking it down in one. So I'm ultra conservative when it comes to that, but I don't want to get that, or let me rephrase that. I don't want you all to get that phone call that says the tree fell on my house, the tree fell on my car when my baby was in it, and you knew the tree was bad. It just, we have to do something proactively to get on top of our forest. And this was an opportunity that I get the chance to talk to all of you about doing something, just some type of a program to get started. We just need to make a commitment to our forest. And obviously I'm too close to the forest to see the trees, but please just listen to me, that we have to do something, or we're going to have some catastrophic failures that are going to get us in trouble.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, I mean, that was obviously, at least to me, it was pretty new. I hadn't heard a lot of this until Susie kind of forwarded some of that information. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but obviously we're going to have to see, as the city administration, is if there's additional money that we can free up to start some program, maybe start a small program and make it annual or something like that. But we'll definitely have to look into that. Cheryl, Susie, any comments?
No, nothing really. I think we definitely agree that ideally we would have a preventative maintenance program for our trees. We just haven't been able to really adequately budget for that. So always looking for resources to try to make some of the things we know we would like to do happen.
Yeah.
Well, and I know I've mentioned it before, but I mean, certainly those, now that our rec plan has been submitted, we'll go after that community forestry grant too, definitely for this year. I mean, it'll be funding for next year, but we'll go for that. And I know one of those eligible projects is to do a tree inventory, and that is something that Hazel Park had old. I mean, it's a dated one, but dated is better than nothing, I think, in terms of at least having some sort of idea of what maybe need to come down, at least in the future. So so there's a medium, long-term possibility.
Susie, I'd also like you to think about talking to Relief Michigan.
Relief Michigan?
Relief Michigan is another nonprofit.
Relief, like leaf as in the leaf, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Relief Michigan. And maybe they can help us through some of the, at least getting the labor to assist in planting trees. I'm not convinced that necessarily they would give us the size trees that our residents would want. But at least it would be the funding and perhaps the labor to assist us in doing that. And whether or not they do row trees or just in the parks, I'm not quite sure, but we've had some success in other communities with that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I
Yeah,
hadn't heard of them.
The executive director's name is Melinda Jones.
All right, anyone else have any questions for Judd? Okay. All right, well, thanks, Judd. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for the opportunity, and please, now that I've seen you all, please feel free to call anytime that I can help you, and Cheryl can get a hold of me, whatever I need to do. And I
Right.
think I'm good to sign off now. Do I need to stay on?
No, I think you're good. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks very
Thanks
much.
for the time.
Thank
Bruce,
you.
I'm sorry I went over.
Oh, no, that's okay.
more than
That's
my
okay. It's
5
good
minutes.
information.
All right.
Yep. Okay. All right. So then just the one, I guess, remaining tree question, I guess, is so at least for this year, when we, when we are moving forward, I mean, in those instances where we do have roots, that are going to require some grinding. I mean, there's going to be some costs associated with that. I think, Scott, you said what, $50 to $100 typically.
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify. We know we have an idea, right, Cheryl, of how many we have in the South Quadrant, but I think we're going to have a lot more. I think it's a lot more of an issue in the older areas. But I mean, I was looking at what you sent today, Susie, about with the Hazel Park, and they had 380 flags that were replaced in their program. So if you take 380, figure we're similar size. I don't know if that's a good estimate or not, but then you take the worst possible case, $100, you're not talking $38,000 that we would have to come up with if we paid for it through the city versus charging that fee back to the residents as part of their sidewalk replacement. So I'm just curious on people's thoughts on and again, I can convey those what our body's thoughts are at the study session on Monday, but because again, we're going to talk about that, because if we do decide to cover those costs, that's something that council is going to have to approve. So just curious on what everybody's thoughts are, questions, or any ideas that we may have regarding that.
Are these trees that we're talking about only in the easements, the city easement area, or is it just any tree? Okay.
So it'd be for city, because the complaint we get a lot, when we start talking about, and I think you guys heard it as part of the committee, a year and a half ago when we talked about this and got the sidewalk program approved. People's comments were, well, yeah, but it's a city tree that's causing my sidewalk to come up, and then I'm going to have to pay for it. So, what we're thinking is maybe, at least there's a little bit of solace in the fact that maybe the city pays for, the root board, taking care of the root, but the residents still have to pay for the sidewalk. So we're only talking about the trees in the right of way, the city trees.
Okay.
Hey, Bruce, I just want to qualify what grinding is typically. It's a contractor with an axe.
Right.
It really is. They usually take an axe and they'll chop back about 2 or 3 inches off the edge of the sidewalk so they can get their forms in there. And then we have them chop it down probably 2 or 3 inches underneath the new sidewalk. So it's not like they're taking out a ton of roots, but they are chopping out some roots.
Yeah.
Well, it's either that, or if the tree is deemed unhealthy or not worth saving, are we talking about taking the tree down then instead, or are we just talking about root maintenance to put the sidewalk back to its normal?
I think like in the case of like Hazel Park and what Judd was recommending for us, I think they would take a more holistic approach where some trees would come out, but we don't have such a program in place. So we never really talked about having any kind of program like that. We just talked about fixing the root and putting the new piece of sidewalk over it. And I guess the risk of that, I mean, is, 10 years down the road, you could have the root pushing the sidewalk out again. And, he also indicated that there was some risk of, the destabilizing the tree. Although I think, Scott, you said in your experience, you haven't really seen much of that.
No, we haven't. I sure won't talk over Judd. He's got a lot of experience. So.
Right.
Well, I also think it's one of those situations that if you ask someone for how to handle a situation, if you ask a surgeon, he's going to say cut. So
Right,
if you ask
right,
a tree person, they're going to say save the tree. So
right.
you have to take that into account, but that is his area.
All right, so I don't know if anybody, I just wanted to bring up the discussion to see if anybody had any ideas. I mean, I think obviously what we would love to do is, have the city at least cover the cost for, what the city's trees have caused, even though the city's not required to do that. So I think that's probably just a discussion that we have to have in council and decide if we can find the money to do that. I mean, it might ease the sting a little bit, but
I think I heard Susie say that Judd would take a drive-by and you
Mhm.
guys are gonna quantify how many trees are actually in that position where maybe the roots need to be cut back, or maybe the tree needs to come down altogether. He's gonna assess what the conditions are.
well, that would be a program that we would have to contract with him. And I think what was the estimate that he said in the email, Susie, was $100,000 a year for maintenance and for that program combined, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know if I put it in my summary email to you guys today or not. But I asked Tom, like, what are you guys paying out for this? Because I threw out that $100,000 number at him. He was like, yeah, it's like 50, 60 per section, and they do, so whatever, do the math on whatever that times 7 sections already, but and then they do like all, Hazel Park does all of their stumping in-house, and they try and do a lot of the trimming, like the basic trimming in-house, that kind of stuff to try and cut their costs down. So, and they have a bigger crew than we do. So
on a weekly basis, typically, well, I guess they haven't been around in a while because it's cold, but Davies, they've been all through the neighborhood, and they do a lot of I've seen them pulling down a lot of trees and stump grinding in the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that's actually something different, Joe. That's Davey is contracted to, not by us, but to clear the wires, the electrical wires from DTE. So that's their contractor, not ours.
Okay. I thought they might have been ours, because I know I see, well, or maybe who is that with the tree, the root, not root, but the branch grinder?
That's
No,
hard.
you're
That's
thinking-
typically hard.
yeah.
Well, but I mean,
Okay.
Davey's got them too. Davey was using those when they were pulling branches down as well.
Right. Okay.
Well, and that's something that I actually have their website pulled up right now. That was something that Judd said to talk, to look into, is Davey does, they'll do those tree inventories. And that's who had done that old tree inventory for Hazel Park back in 99 or something like that, was Davey. So they're like all over the place doing those inventories. So.
All right. Anybody else have any comments about this? I just wanted to bring this up and make everybody aware of it before we get into like the details. We probably talked about this longer than I had imagined, but
So I think it's the right thing to do if the city could afford it, to support the sidewalk program, as opposed to not doing anything and then sidewalks go bad again in 5 years or whatever. Yeah. So, but until we have a better idea, I guess, on, because $100,000 is a maintenance program. It doesn't actually count towards the, if there's 30 trees that need to be either taken down or roots addressed, right? That's an additional cost.
Right. Then you've got additional
right,
cost
so.
as well. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me move on to, I want to give some updates and then give Scott a chance to talk. I've got probably about 5-10 minutes of updates. So the first thing I wanted to kind of alert you guys to is just, we made the recommendation and then we gave it to council, and there were some changes along the way, mostly minor, but we haven't met since then. So I just wanted to kind of just bring you guys up to speed on that. So the first thing, the most major thing is, as we were talking about it, again, this goes back to what I was mentioning, the item that was misconstrued in social media. As you remember, the bond counsel was very clear and said it on multiple occasions that, we should be asking for as much money as we can politically tolerate, because we don't want to just say, all right, these projects add up to 5.1 million and find out that we need 5.6 million and then have to go and find a way of financing another 500,000. So, again, they recommended if you ask for too much, then you just don't spend it. So as we looked at it, we kind of felt that the contingency amount, we had built some contingency in there. We felt that was a little low, so we actually added a couple $100,000 for contingency costs. So instead of being $5.18 million for the bond, we upped it to 5.38, bringing the total project cost to 7.12. With the delta there being covered through what we have in the water sewer fund right now. There were also some other minor changes in the estimates, as we continue to move forward, with looking into these various projects. We were able to hone down some estimates a little bit further. So there were some changes, both positive and minus. So for example, we looked at the $550 that we had estimated for doing the material line identification at the stop box, and we decided to up that to $650 per house. Because we didn't really take into account, the potential damage to the sidewalk. So we up that. So there were some minor changes. Again, some of them went up, some of them went down a little bit. And so the overall effect was, the monthly amount that we have been talking about, I think it was $950 when we last talked about it. It actually went up to about $10.40. So there was a little bit of a change there. The other thing that was kind of a bummer, we had talked about the $10, well, in this case now $10.40, being a theoretical maximum, and we didn't think we were going to hit that. But actually, in the first year, we will hit the 1040. The reasoning being, we were thinking that we would be able to split the bond into two issuances, but the dollar amount, or I should say the bond costs that they gave us was not something that scales. So if we did it in two issuances, we're paying $145,000 in bond costs. We would pay another $145,000 in bond costs, and that wasn't really made clear to us when we were talking about that. So it is going to be one issuance. But the rest of the talk that we had about, that number dropping, it should drop. So in year one, if we replace all the water meters, our estimates are that, that'll drop by about $2. And there are other factors that we thought would drop it slightly as well. So it still should go down, but we will pay the full amount the first year. So that was kind of unfortunate. And then I just only bring this up because I misunderstood this, and so since I'm kind of presenting most of the stuff, I probably either presented it so that you guys misunderstood it, or maybe you guys understood it and I didn't. But we talked about the water main sections that I think we identified 5 water main sections for the project. 3 of them are actually going to be done this year, with the intent that we'll be paving those streets next year. So I thought those would be done the same year as they were being paved. It's not an issue of cost, it doesn't change any costs or anything like that, but I just wanted to make that clear because I didn't understand that. And
hey, Bruce, can I clarify that real quick?
Yeah.
We are designing 3 of them sections right now and permitting all 3, but only 2 of them are going to be built this year.
Okay. Yeah.
The third one, which is Golden Gate from 11 to California, will be constructed the following year.
Yeah. Okay.
But we want to get them all permitted just to save some money.
Yep. And so those will be 3 streets, obviously, that will be included in year 2. And speaking of that, I hadn't planned on talking about this, but that reminds me. Probably, I think Scott and I talked about early March, beginning to look at identifying the streets for year 2 and year 3, so that they can, have all spring and summer and fall to get the design work done and, look at the ditches and so forth. And if you remember, year 2 and 3 will be a little bit more complex because we will be biting off some bigger ditch systems. in year 2 and 3. Remember, year 1, we picked the ones that had good ditch systems. So, and then the only other change, I think, or I guess just to mention is that as we, and maybe I told you guys this, I don't remember, but I put it on the list. But as Scott and I did go out and look at the ditches, for year 1, we only identified 7 culverts that need to be replaced on residents' driveways. So we are not planning on doing a special assessment for that, like we had talked about. Those are just going to be handled through code enforcement. So those people will be getting a letter soon indicating that their culvert doesn't comply and that they'll need to replace that. So I think that's all in terms of changes. The other thing we wanted to mention is we did have a meeting about 2 weeks ago with Sunday's group. Sunday is the group that owns or that runs Lathrup Village LLC. So basically our DPW, because a lot of the work that we're talking about, the gate valves, the fire hydrants, the material line identifications, all that was all going to be done by that group. So we wanted to have a meeting with them to make sure that we were seeing eye to eye, that they could handle the amount of work that we would be giving them, which they say they can. And I know we're working on a contract to get it in writing, the rates and so forth. But in year 1, for our plan, they're going to do 511 service line identifications. They're going to do 40 fire hydrants. And we did learn in that meeting that most of the fire hydrants are the screw-in type. So the replacement is relatively easy. They don't have to do any excavation, so they can do about 5 per day once they get started on those. So that was kind of good news. And then 54 gate valves in the first year. Most of those will be replacements. Some of those will be refurbishments. And then we also talked about the fact that some of them might be new gate valves. They might put in a few new ones to bring our lines up to current standards, current design standards. So there might be a couple new ones. And then Scott and another engineer in his group that we met that day was Andy, who's been working on the project. They're coordinating with Lathrup Services. So, and this is just to go back to some of the social media stuff, talking about how this stuff isn't coordinated. We need to have a coordinated approach. This is a clear example of how we're coordinating. So Scott and Andy identified 80 service line material identifications, 10 gate valves, and 6 hydrants that need to be done prior to May 3rd when the paving starts. So we're coordinating all that together so that all that work is done, prior to any paving starting. And again, that's going to start. The project will start on May 3rd. Scott's going to talk a lot more about paving. I'm going to steal his thunder on a couple of small things here. So again, starts May 3rd. I think Scott, you'll probably talk about the estimates that we got in. So I think I emailed you guys out. They came in much lower than we expected. So that was great news, which means, throughout the project, if this holds up, we'll be able to pave more mileage than what we had originally estimated. The jet cleaning of the functional culverts that we talked about, we felt, or I guess Scott felt, for a variety of reasons, it was better to just put that in the road bid. So that was included in the bid. Not our DPW is not going to be doing that work. And then I think you guys all saw Scott's reply that the Public Works parking lot and the Santa Barbara contract are included in the bid so that we can get the unit pricing, but that money will be backed out so that it's not paid for with millage funds. So I think Mike Griffin had brought that up. So I just wanted to make sure in case you guys didn't see the email. Service lines, we're going to do 10 this year. I think Cheryl is currently working on using the SACWA sub-agreement, which is a discounted rate with, I think D'Angelo is the vendor. Cheryl, have we identified the 10 that we're going to do yet this year? And do we know when we're going to start on that?
We have a file. I have to be able to extract it from former employee's computer, but we have it.
Okay, and any idea when we're going to start doing them?
They said they could start as soon as I get the addresses, so I'm just going to access the information.
Okay, great. Okay, and then just some other updates. I'm going to ask Cheryl and Susie to do these, but can you guys just talk a little about where we are on water meter testing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that's what I was answering on the last question.
No, that was the service line replacements.
Oh, on the service line replacements, we have the draft agreement. Our attorney Scott was going over it and anticipating moving on from there. We'll give them the addresses. We do have addresses from people who have self-identified
Okay.
and who we already knew were in existence. So we have the 10. We have to get the permission slips out to the residents and just go ahead and get those done.
Okay, great.
So
All
the
right, and
water
then-
meter question is the one I have to get the file. Okay.
Okay. And then Susie, you're working on the water meter RFP?
Yes, that's a lot of detail, but yes, I'm going through those. It's some great bedtime reading in case anybody's interested. So
Okay. And do we have any idea when we're gonna put that? I mean, obviously we've got to wait till the, what is it, the 27th, when the bond is officially, a go, but do we have an idea of when we're gonna try to get that out?
we haven't talked about a deadline, but I'm happy to have one. To give me, make sure I'm moving things along. So I would say, a couple weeks to make
Yeah.
sure
Well,
that
I mean-
it's drafted, that I have everything drafted correctly. And then I'm sure that I'm going to have some
Edits.
someone, Scott Ringler, I'm looking straight at you right now. I'm going to need some technical, make sure I got all the technical stuff in there correctly. So,
Well, I guess technically, and Cheryl, you may know the answer to this. I'm guessing technically we can't even release it until we issue the resolution at the March meeting, right?
The resolution relative to,
Well, in the March meeting, we've got the resolution for the two bonds where the city we have got to pass another resolution to kick off getting the money. So can we issue the RFP before then or no?
I guess technically we could. I mean, it's obvious you can't approve anything unless
Right.
you have a funding source that's
Okay.
affirmed. So
All right. So then a few weeks is probably reasonable on that. And then are we working on a mailing? We had talked about a mailing for the water line self-checks.
we haven't been working on a mailing in particular. We're getting ready to do the next edition of the Your Town.
Okay.
So it will be, we'll try to make it very prominent in there. And hopefully get some more attention. And if that doesn't draw a significant response, then we'll go ahead with another mailing separately.
Yeah. Does anybody have any ideas on any creative ways we can get residents to do the self-identifications?
If I could suggest putting yard signs out down the streets. So as people are either driving or walking, maybe they can take a picture of it and remind them to do it. The yard signs we can get made, they're like $15 each or something. But if you got maybe 30 of them, we could work with DPW on how to stage them. So it's, not the entire city at once, but we could look at different blocks.
Right, like maybe
Especially the blocks where we need that information relatively soon.
Right, like you can do a barrage in one section with like 30 signs and then move them a week later to
something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe to like kind of build on that, everyone who is already self-reported, hey, will you volunteer to have your sign right there?
Yeah.
But in terms of just trying to be strategic, Scott, if you could help us in identifying the specific areas where you need to know that information right away, it would make sense to do a mailing to them.
Well, first off is all the roads we want to do this spring. Secondly would be the water main streets coming up. You know, that's a little, we got to get them lead services taken care of before we can do the water main, or we got to keep both water mains live until we make switches. That gets difficult.
So offline, perhaps if me, you, and Susie can narrow down those areas so we can identify the addresses and do a specialized mailing for them in particular.
Yep.
Let them know that they probably don't want us digging up at their house twice.
Oh, no.
And Cheryl, you think you and Susie can look into possibly getting signs made?
Yeah, I know the DDA, I mean, we only had 4 made, but we had 4 little lawn signs made, and it was, I think it was 70, 80 bucks maybe at Zip. So I'm sure if we bump that quantity up, it'll go down even more. So.
Well, and I can tell you, knowing from, you know, my experience with the, with getting my election signs, signs on the cheap,
Right.
was a third of the price, because I went to Zip and I went to a few other you know, Kinko's, and like the place signs on the cheap, they did a great job, and they were literally a third of the price.
Okay.
So okay, and then yeah, and then like I said, we're working on letters to the 7 culvert homes, and I think that's all I had. So questions on any of that before I turn it over to Scott? You don't have to raise your hand, just blurt out, Joe.
No, we can't hear you, Joe.
I think you're muted.
No, I don't know what. No, she's not muted. Try it again. Nope.
Why don't you type it to us in the chat? Oh, I see you posted in the chat. Can you hear me? The answer to that is no. All right, while Joe's typing, anyone else have any thoughts?
She doesn't appear to have one of those little icons in the corner, so I wonder if she needs some special permission to be able to get in.
Joe, no.
It doesn't show she's muted, but you know what I mean? At least on my screen.
Stage the signs in the subdivision entrances like they do at the yard sales. Oh, that's a good idea. Yep.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. I don't. Oh, there she is. Okay, yeah, because she shows up as
I
muted
see
here.
it now, so maybe not me now. Would all work? Yeah.
No, still don't hear her. All right, well, just raise your hand if you've got comments, and we'll look at the chat. Perfect. All right. Anyone else? All right, Scott, you're on.
All right, thanks, Bruce.
You should be able to share, Scott.
Okay. So I thought we've been all working together for about 2 years on all this. So I thought if I could take a few minutes and kind of run down the backside of kind of the stuff we do. I got to figure out how to do this. So I kind of wanted to run over basically the project manual, which is the bid document. And then I want to run through the plans really quick that we put together for the road project. And then we'll kind of talk about the bids that we got. So I'm going to scroll through this pretty quick. I kind of highlighted a few of the things I wanted to go over. I assume everybody.
I think I sent it to everybody too, Scott.
Okay. I'm sure everybody read it.
Looked at it.
Oh yeah, twice.
So you can all see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing is, this is called the project manual. It's really the bid document. Between this and the plans that'll come up next is what we put on the city's website called Mitten. That's basically the bidding website that the city uses. I think that bid went out to 600 contractors throughout the state of Michigan. And that could be anybody that signs up under these different codes. But even, you know, I sign up for these things. So these things come through me too, or our company. So just keep flipping. So this is the first thing. It's the advertisement. So this basically details the time and the date that it's due. Overall, what the work includes. And then it talks about the bonds and insurance that are required, that nobody, you know, we're all held harmless. Because there are occasions where the city may not select the lowest bidder. That does get into a little bit of issue. So we kind of put this in here to protect everybody, that the city does not have to select the lowest bidder. These are the instructions to the bidders. So this document here kind of describes everything that the bidder needs to put a bid together. So this talks about the bid security. So whenever the city takes a bid, they have to put a 5% bid bond down. And is what that is 5% of their quote. So if it's $1 million, they got to have a bid bond for $50,000. And if they fault on that bid, the city rightfully can go after that $50,000. We'll talk about that. This talks about how it's awarded. And then this is the actual bid form. So this is the form that the contractor will fill out and submit to the city. So when we actually open up the bids, this is basically what we open up. They usually just run this next 5 or 6 pages and submit it. And then this here is all the work items that are included in this project. There's quite a few of them. So when they go through and they fill out, sorry if I keep scrolling up, this is the quantity that the project has. This is basically the unit that they will bid. They'll put a bid price down, which is their unit price, and then they will multiply the quantity by the unit price to come up with the amount. And every time, whenever they submit these, we check every one of these things, which you'll see later in the bid tab. So then they come up with the total contract amount. This is what we read at the bid opening. We do make them give us references. And then this is just the documentation they sign. So after the council will award this project, which should be Monday night, we prepare what we call the contract document, which is basically the standard form of agreement. So in the contract document, all this stuff previously goes bye-bye because that's just the bidding document. So then this is the agreement along with everything else that follows. So we will take, for all the work, we will add all the bid items and the bid quantities and the costs into this section. So this is basically the work they have to do. That'll go on the next two pages when we're done here. This is just a lot of the contract language in here. And this is where they sign. These are the bonds, so they'll have to provide a performance bond. This is 100% of the bid amount. They have to provide a labor and material bond. So, you know, we know that they have to pay their labor and they have to pay for their materials. Again, this is 100% of their bid price. And then this is a maintenance and guarantee bond. So is what we require the contractor is to have a maintenance and guarantee bond for actually 2 years at only 50% of the cost. Because, you know, a project like this, the whole thing doesn't fail at once. Typically nothing fails, but so we do require them to have it for 2 years, but only 50%.
Hey, Scott, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah,
Joe
sure.
has a question. Is the 5% the equivalent of an allowance or contingency?
No, it's just 5% of their bid price.
Okay.
This is a declaration. They have to sign this every time we provide them with a pay estimate that basically says they're paying their They're workers, they're furnishing the materials, blah, blah, blah. This is actually an affidavit that they have to fill out before the city pays them their final pay estimate. So this is a little more detail that they've, fully and satisfactorily paid everybody, secured any claims from subcontractors. And this has to be notarized. I'm not going to go through that. I think the city requires that. So this is actually the standard general conditions of the contract. This is 41 pages of stuff that Scott Baker likes to read, not myself. But it's really it's the lawyer part of the whole contract. I'm going to flip through here really quick.
Is there, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there anything built in there as far as performance for them, as far as timing goes? Because it seems to me like any project that's been done around here takes forever, and it's just left looking like heck over the winter. I mean, you look up at the road there on Bloomfield by 12 Mile. So now all winter we have to look at that because it seems like all the sewer and the projects that they do, they end up doing them in November, and then they don't get them done because winter comes, and then we have to look at it all, until July or something.
And that's a great point, Mike. I've had a few conversations with Sunday Brothers about, they have to timely get this stuff done for the city. They got a lot on their plate the next 3 summers, and they did a pretty good job, I think, on phase 2 of Santa Barbara. Phase 1 was really slow. Phase 2 is when they went from, let's just say La Crosse north and then down Roseland and where you set up near 12 Mile. Unfortunately, you're not going to get much to grow in November. So we need to get them to try to get this work done before that so we can actually get grass to grow. But to answer your question, I'm going to go through that in a few slides here and show you what we did as far as completing these projects. So.
Also, there's another question from Joe.
Okay.
Do we allow EJCDC guidelines for contracted administration? Do you withhold retainage?
Yeah, we withhold 10% retainage until at least 50% of the contract is completed. And then we will allow them to go down to 5% retainage as long as I get consent of their surety company to release more retainage. Did Joe say okay?
Awesome.
Okay. So the supplemental conditions are basically anything that's changed in the general conditions, which were above. So we make a few amendments in there. That's just what this describes. This describes the insurances that are required. So they got to provide workman's comp, general liability, automobile liability. There's an owner's protective liability that we require the contractor to purchase on behalf of the city of Lathrup Village. The builder's risk we don't require. That's something more for when they have like stockpiles of material on site that could get damaged, which they really don't, because if they're bringing asphalt out to the site, they're putting it down that day. So we save some money by not requiring that. And then these are the different amounts that are required. So when they send me the executed contract, it'll have the insurance and bonds, which I will review through there and make sure they're in accordance with this. That's the owner's protective liability. There's a thing up here. They're going to have to pull a road commission permit for that little bit of work up on a villa in Southfield Road. So we leave that in there that they know they got to go pull a permit. All right, so these are supplemental specifications. These are things that we usually write. They talk about how they're going to get paid for their work. This is their general work hours. They cannot work before 7 or after 7 p.m. So this is basically the city's quiet time outside of these times. We don't allow them to work on Sundays. If they want to work outside of these times, they got to get basically a permit, which I know in Ferndale, a permit has to come from city council. I don't know so sure about Lathrup, but there are occasions if they're doing something, they're going to run a little bit late, we let them go. But if it's going to be till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, we don't let them go any further than that 7 o'clock. So as far as testing, as a subcontractor to Giffords Webster, we have a material testing company that will go out there and do concrete testing, asphalt testing, and density testing, which is the aggregate, to make sure they're getting proper compaction. So this is the progress clause. This is kind of how we set up the whole project in our proposed dates. It just kind of gives the contractor and the city an idea when everything's going to happen. So the first thing was the bid opening, February 15th, which I had the wrong date because your guys' meeting is until the 22nd, but city council will award the contract. And then after that, I'll start giving them a notice of bid award. They'll have to get their bonds and insurance and sign the contract back to me. Sometime around March 3rd, I'll get with Cheryl to sign that contract. And then basically their notice to proceed, which starts their contractor days. So I'm going to talk about these groups a little later, but you know, the tentative start date is May 3rd. We hope to be done with construction July 23rd, which is substantial completion. So substantial completion means when the project is ready for its intended use, which basically means the road is paved. You know, there's punch list work after that. There's some landscape restoration. We hope to have the entire project done by September 17th. I'm going to skip through that. This is just MDOT's errata. So, you know, everything in here is in accordance with the MDOT specifications unless we've written a special provision that differs from that specification. That's what all this stuff is. So these are the special provisions. So it's either something that's not per MDOT or it's something in addition to the MDOT. I'm not going to go through every one of these things. So we like to have biweekly meetings. So we'll get together with the contractor every 2 weeks, discuss the schedules. We want them to give us a schedule on what they're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks. These are the items we like to have on that schedule. I'll be honest, getting a schedule out of these guys is brutal. It really is. You know, their schedules change by the day. They have weather issues. They have other projects. We do our best to let the city and the residents know what is going to be coming up in the next week or two.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is every 2 weeks quick, you know, frequent enough? I mean, is it something that could be done every week?
I think every 2 weeks is probably good to start with, Bruce. I mean, we're going to have a full-time inspector out there. He's going to know what's going on. You know, we can anticipate where they'll be next and what they'll be doing next. I just can't tell you exactly what day. I guess on a side note, we're developing a web-based schedule in which our hopes is, and we're working through the Lathrup's GIS, that we're going to be able to make this thing public. So like somebody that lives on Santa Barbara can click on their street and it's going to give them an indication of what's happening.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Because I know we had talked about the website, and I assume I had this in my notes before, and I must have skipped over it. But the website, when I say we're gonna have a website out there, by we, that means you, right?
Well, yeah, we're gonna have to keep it updated. So you know, my inspector's probably gonna be on that website every night or a couple of nights, identifying what streets and you know what they're gonna be doing on these streets.
Yeah. Okay.
Trying to keep you know the public informed as best as we can.
Yeah.
2 questions from Joe. One, is 90% considered substantial?
Not necessarily. Substantial completion is when the project is ready for its intended use. So this is a paving project. So its intended use is when the motoring public can get back on the road.
Okay. And then how do they receive payment, the contractor, I suppose? How do they receive payment percentage completion based on detailed cost breakdown?
they won't get a percentage of completion. They will get paid on the exact quantity of work that they do per the unit prices in that whole bid form. So every month we will prepare a pay estimate on all the work items that they've done up to that month, through that month. So if they put down 507 tons of asphalt, they get paid for 507 tons of asphalt. I wish I could hear Joe because I don't know if she's saying okay or not. Okay, so here's the schedule. This kind of goes to Mike's question a little bit. We broke this into two different groups, and I'll be able to show this a little differently on the plans. So group one are basically the streets that we're going to be doing type C work to, which is milling and overlaying. And we want to do them streets first and have them streets substantially completed before they go to group two. Group two is the streets that we're going to be doing a lot of excavation on. And I want to do them later due to the existing clay that's out there. I hate to open group two streets up in May because once we get rain, them streets are a bathtub because there's nowhere for the water to go with the clay. So we prefer to do that when it's a little warmer out. So we want to get group one streets done before we work on group two streets. And group two streets are generally going to be shut down because we are going to be digging, in some cases, 15, 18 inches deep on that street. So there's no way anybody's going to be able to drive down them streets. Group one streets, they can drive down because there's going to be existing asphalt or concrete already there. Kind of makes sense? And I'll show that a little better, I think, on the map that comes up in the plans. We will run into sprinklers. We do replace sprinklers. So we put, units in there and we get prices to fix sprinklers. Hopefully not a lot of them, but a lot of people have their sprinklers right next to that edge of the road and they do get dug up and hit. The landscape restoration, we are going to, anything that's disturbed, so on the group C streets, which is a mill and overlay, we will repair to about 1 foot outside of the pavement. On group B and C, because we're doing a lot more work, we're going to go to about 3 foot outside of the pavement. And I think, Bruce, that's what we've talked about through all our estimates.
Yeah, say that again. What was the 3 foot?
On group B and C, where we're doing more, or A and B, I'm sorry, A and B.
Yep.
And that also, if we're doing a driveway, it'll be 3 foot next to the driveway and sidewalks, near ADA ramps and stuff. So the restoration is 2 inches of topsoil and seed. Our seed we're going to be using is a hydro seed. So it's basically, the mixture that they spray out there. It's got fertilizer in it. It's got mulch in it. It looks green already. And then,
Scott, sorry. Question from Joe. How do we address restoration that's gone bad?
They're required to repair it. They need to provide, there's probably a better word in here. They need to provide germination so that the grass needs to be growing, or they have to come back out and either redo it or put more hydro seed down on it. I'm not sure if that's the best way to say it, but they are required to provide a healthy looking grass. And as you can see, there's also an item in here for them. They have to come out and water it. So they have to provide, I think we put in here 2 weeks of watering.
2 weeks. Okay.
At some point, the resident has to take over it because they're not going to be out there all year long watering. It's just a big expense.
So Joe's comment is, my culvert is crushed. So sorry, guys.
It's just maintenance. We're going to get into that in a little bit. So this is a residential notice. We do, before the contractor gets started out there, they have to deliver a notice to the residents 3 days in advance of starting. We're also, through the city, going to be giving them some advance notice We'll have to start working on that probably in March/April to send it out saying at some point this summer, you know, your road's going to be worked on. Contractor will provide you some notice. Residents are also going to start seeing barricades and, you know, drum barrels and stuff like that and getting delivered to a street. So they're going to know something's going to start pretty soon. So machine grading is, these are type B streets. So where we actually have aggregate underneath the asphalt, we're going to pull all that asphalt out. They need to grade that existing aggregate. Some cases there's not enough aggregate left after they pull the asphalt out. So we have a work item for bringing additional aggregate in. I think this this happens on Glenwood. I think.
Is that an extra cost to us or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's a work item. It's included in the bid.
Okay.
And you know, we made an estimate. We're going to need 2 inches of aggregate. You might need 3, you might need 1. And then, you know, the other thing we want them to do is when they're done machine grading it, they got to start paving. So I don't want them out there to grade it and wait 2 weeks because then you'll have trucks and cars running it up. So, you know, we do give them a little time frame in there. Subgrade undercutting. So this happens mostly is going to be on our B's and C's. So once they cut all that asphalt and existing clay out, any areas that are really unstable that we don't think we can pave on, they got to dig more out. And that's what's called undercutting. We don't know where that's going to happen. So, you know, we put an as directed quantity in here. So it's a mechanism for them to put a bid to. I think we use 200 cubic yards. It might be more, it might be less. So, Mike, this kind of goes to your question about timeliness. We put in here liquidated damages. So this basically tells them they have only so long to be working on a street. So group 1 streets, I know this seems like a lot of time, but it's 6 weeks they have from start to finish for substantial completion. And again, we're letting them work on all these streets at once. 6 weeks does seem like a lot, but you know, there's a mechanism in here that we require them once they put the first lift of asphalt down. So they put 2 different lifts of asphalt down. After the first lift, we make them stay off the street for a week. And we do that because of all the clay out there. Once you put 300-degree asphalt down, that water from that clay tends to want to cool that asphalt down, and it forms a little layer of water underneath that asphalt. And when you start putting heavy vehicles on there, it starts pumping. So what we do is we make them stay off it for a week to try to get all that water to reside. We've done it for the last 10 years. We've had very good success with it. You know, there's other things when we put concrete down for driveways, they need to be off the driveway for a week. So 42 days seems like a lot, but there's a lot of downtime in between there for curing and stuff like that. So if they start Glenwood today, and if they're not done in 6 weeks, they get $50 a day liquidated damages. It's not a lot, but it does add up, and it's some incentive for them to get the project done.
On the projects where they can't drive on it, how long is that going to be that they can't even drive or park on the road?
Group C streets, Mike, not that long. I would say maybe a week or 2. Group A and B, I mean, you know, they could be 3 or 4 weeks. So, you know, the goal is when they start ripping these streets out that they're going to be bringing aggregate in behind them, and they kind of work backwards with putting aggregate down. So they'll take a truck out with clay, and the next truck that comes in should have aggregate on it. They'll dump that aggregate, take that same truck and load it with clay. So, you know, it's kind of a revolving process here, but at some point they won't be able to get down that street. I don't have a great time frame, Mike. I'm going to say 3 or 4 weeks, possibly. They might not be able to get down their street.
You know, one thing, you're just making me think of something. One thing we might start thinking about is, what do we do with the elderly?
And the handicap.
We might try to create a group or something where, we can carry their groceries from, the street to, the side street to their house or something like that, because that's going to be a little bit of a problem for some people.
Well, yeah, there's garbage and there's mail.
Yeah.
We're going to recommend that people that can't get down their street because the mail won't be able to get down there, that they put a hold on their mail. So
some people won't notice the difference.
Right.
And get their mail anyway.
That's true lately.
We haven't gotten it for the last couple of days. Monday was the holidays.
So that's basically substantial completion. And then we also put in there a time frame for doing the landscaping. They have 14 days to get in there and do the landscaping. Otherwise, they start getting hit with another $50 a day. You'll see a couple of these, like, the DPW parking lot's really important to the city. So we assess them a little more money by not getting that done on time. And same with Santa Barbara North. It's a big street, carries a lot of people. We want them to get in there and out of there. So we got to be careful about what we charge here. It can't be excessive. It's got to be a reasonable number, or else, if they take it to court, it's going to get thrown out. If we say $500 a day, it's going to be, so it's going to be a little bit of rhyme and reason on that number. So Mike, does that help answer you a little bit? So there are some liquidated damages in here for them not being timely.
Yeah, as long as they don't drag it out and then all of a sudden they get started late, and then what happens, when you get in the fall, and if you're doing it in November, then you can't do the landscaping and the seed planting, and then they tend to wait until, June or July, and I think you're probably getting a lot of complaints about that long term. People not parking on the roads, but do you want
we're going to get a lot of complaints, Mike. The next 3 years is going to be complaint after complaint.
We did Wiltshire from Santa Barbara to the west. It's not a dead end, but it turns south back there. And the residents were awesome. We got one call from some lady. She ended up getting a ticket because she parked maybe on Santa Barbara or somewhere, but the city had to bring that ticket in, and the police, took care of it. I don't remember ever getting a phone call of anybody upset. So, your residents were really good on that street. So,
well, if they're having a graduation party, they need to have it early.
Yeah, we run into that, yard sales, people are moving, can't get down their street. So, the more notice we can give them, the better. This was the culvert clean out. So we did put a work item in there for cleaning out the culverts. I think there's one or two driveways or something out there. I forget all these that have brick or block pavers. So there's a work item in there for that. So these are just MDOT standard plans. So instead of us recreating all these, we just add in the MDOT plans. So any last questions on kind of the project manual?
It's amazing that roads ever get built.
Well, I'll be honest. If a contractor abided by everything in here, you never get nothing done. And it would cost probably twice as much. So the stuff's in here to cover your butt.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the plans. This shouldn't take as long. This is the cover sheet. So these are all the roads that are going to be worked on. And is what these letters correspond to is the repair method. So A was reconstructing with 5 inches of asphalt and an aggregate base. B was reconstructing 5 inches of asphalt and machine grading. And then C is basically the milling and the overlaying of the road. Some of this stuff, we have to get an erosion control permit, so we got to put different things in here for that. This is just a typical detail sheet. These are our asphalt estimates. These are driveway details, and here's, I think that's the 3-foot, Bruce, we talk about for asphalt, into the first joint for concrete, landscape restoration. An asphalt driveway gets 4 inches of asphalt.
Hey, Scott, quick question. How much of concrete we doing this year? What percentage you think?
Of roadway, none.
None? Okay.
Of driveways, probably half of them are concrete driveways.
Okay.
Yeah, but the Santa Barbara north of La Crosse is currently concrete. We're taking the concrete out and replacing it with asphalt.
Yeah, okay. That was my question. Okay.
Again, just some more details. There's times where we got to replace mailboxes. So I think we put 12 of them in there just in case. Sometimes these big mills come through here and they might hit a mailbox. So, we put quantities in here to repair it and replace that stuff. These are our undercut details. Over on, I want to say, a Villa and Southfield, we're reconstructing the south side approach to the alley. That's just what this detail is. So this is our traffic control plan. So as I said, we're going to do all these C streets first and get them done. So these are C. Remember, the southern portion of Santa Barbara is a C. We're going to get that done. We're going to allow them to put the final lift of asphalt on just this section with this section. Okay. And I'm doing that because they're going to be running a lot of equipment on this road, and I don't want them to put them on your brand new top course. We'll have them run off the leveling course. The only exception to this is during the C streets, we're going to have them do these 2 B streets. And we're doing that because Santa Barbara is going to be shut down. And if these are shut down, there's no way they're going to be able to get to this street at all. So we want to do this with the C street and this with the C streets. So it was just a little bit of reasoning in there why we were doing a couple of the B streets with the C streets. And then this is basically our group 1s. So these are the streets they're going to start with. And then group 2, these are the section of streets they're going to do. And I just put a little note, residents aren't going to have access to their residence for a duration of the project, especially in group 2. When we work on Santa Barbara, we're going to have a detour set up. This here is a group C portion, so this should be fairly quick, but we're going to route people down Bloomfield. But then when we get to the group A, which is the reconstruction, we're going to be routing them again down San Diego, north and around. And then anybody coming southbound is going to have to come Sunset to Bloomfield, and we're going to put them back down San Quentin. So probably going to get some complaints, a lot more traffic on these streets. And then here's all our plans. And I kind of just going to highlight a few things here. So on all these plans, these are the soil borings we took. So this street has 8 inches of asphalt, 10 inches of sand on clay. When we walked these streets, this was a culvert we felt needed to be cleaned out. So we got a work item to clean out that culvert. This is a typical detail for each kind of a cross section for this street. So it talks about how much asphalt's there and sand. We're going to be removing the asphalt. And then this tells you what we're going to put back down. So this will get 5 inches of asphalt and we'll be machine grading. And then, culvert clean out as shown on the plan view. A couple of these intersections, like this intersection here is actually gravel, the street. We're going to pave back to the return. So we do that because if we were to leave all that gravel, when these cars come onto this new street, they drag a lot of that gravel onto the main street. So we like to pave it back a little ways. And then on the ones that we're reconstructing, we actually set new grades. So you can see all this. We did topo out there, a lot of topo, a lot of grade shots, a lot of contours. So this is how all, you know, the road is graded currently. And then these are our proposed grades. So this grade here is a 95.59. When we're done, it's going to be about a 95.76. So we're actually raising this edge about 2 inches. This edge gets raised about 1 inch. And the center line actually gets raised a few inches, so we have better cross slope. And we have that all along all of these. About every 50 feet, we have grades. And we'll actually have a survey crew out there, and they'll stake these. So the thing about asphalt's not exact, so they'll be close to this. If it was concrete and they put up forms, we could get it dead on. But this gives them what they need to basically pave to and grade to, and it kind of sets their elevations along this road. I'm going to flip. I mean, there's a lot of them. This is a driveway that we felt the culvert needed to be replaced. So this is the work item to replace it. But is what I wanted to do is, this is just for our information, but this is what the homeowner will be responsible for. Removing the culvert, putting in a new culvert, which is about 27 foot long, removing pavement, and then placing pavement, which is, this one's a concrete driveway. So remember, the city's going to pay for this first 3 feet. So we included that as a city work item because they're doing that on most of these. But the resident would be required to do the rest. Yeah, that's just a note. So this street here is a type C. We're just milling and overlaying. We did do a topo out there. We didn't put it in here. Basically because they're going to mill 3 inches, they're going to put 3.5 inches back in. So, but I did have them do topos on these. I think there was only one other one I wanted to go over.
Okay, you're lulling me into a trance.
You guys tired yet?
Just all the flashing.
Oh,
I may have a seizure.
yeah, sorry, I'm flipping through pretty quick. There it is. So these are, you know, we talked about an SAD. Most of these streets didn't really need ditching work. We felt there were certain areas we could do some minor grading to help the flow come, you know, the drainage of the ditch. Not worthwhile to do an SAD because this is really just landscape restoration. So you can see like this driveway here between driveways, you know, you can barely see the culvert. So if they just dig and landscape this little bit of area, they should get much better flow through here. So that's really what all this is. And there's not a lot of it. Just where areas we felt that they could do some minor grading to help the flow of the ditch. That's all I got on the plans. Any questions on that?
It's good. It's good to see. You know, it's you don't realize how much engineering actually goes into it as a layperson here.
That's kind of why I wanted to bring this up. I mean, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and you know, we jammed this stuff out pretty quick. I mean, I had my guys working all Christmas. Survey crew. Fortunately, we had good weather because trying to do this in the snow is not very fun.
Yeah, that's what's so surprising. I never saw anybody although I don't live on those streets, but you know, I do drive through the neighborhood, but never saw anybody. It seems like there'd be a lot of work, a lot of surveying to get this information.
Yeah, you know, the nice thing, Bruce, is a lot of this background stuff. The city had the city had the entire city flown back in 2004. So a lot of this background stuff is an aerial that the city had done. And then, you know, we had a contractor actually draw up all the houses and sidewalks. These are all the trees.
Yeah.
Now, frankly, a lot of these trees are gone because of the emerald ash issue that everybody had.
Right.
So, you know, remember, these planimetrics are only good as 2004, but we're able to take them and then we supplement all these grade shots on top of it. So it really does save the city a lot of survey money down the road. So, all right, I'm going to flip to this now. So this is the bid tab. So last Tuesday, bids were due. Andy and myself and Yvette was there. We opened up all the bids. There was 6 bidders that submitted bids. And then we go through and we put their bids down. We make sure that they're right. Basically what they wrote down and what their finals were. If there's anything red here is where they made a mistake and we correct that mistake. So this here, they must have wrote down 362 times 52 wrong. So we corrected that, which corrected their total. The one thing I wanted to point out here is these 2 first work items, mobilization and traffic control. We only allow them to put a maximum amount of money down on these. When you pay these work items per MDOT, they get paid 50% of mobilization basically as soon as they go out to the site. So if you don't put a max down, a lot of times these guys will put a huge number here because they're going to get a big number up front. So we only allow them a certain percentage. MDOT allows a little more. We don't allow, MDOT allow you to put 10% down for mobilization. Again, they get a big number up front. So it's just a little mechanism that we use so they don't get that big number up front. That's really what I had there. Not a lot. This is the lowest bidder, ASI. These are all their unit prices that they bid. This was our guesstimate. You know.
So you think we were higher because we just took a little bit more of a conservative approach, or you think materials were less than we expected, or?
You know, it's always a hard question, Bruce. We try to put our best estimate from what, you know, other projects we have and what we're seeing, you know, prices come in at. You know, we've seen pavement removal come in a lot higher. 9, 10, and 14 is a pretty good price. You know, Earth X, Santa Barbara, I mean, it's $40,000, but, you know, there's a lot of material they got to dig out of there and take off site and dump. So.
And then the other question I have, because I know people are going to hit me up with this, but and I saw your, you know, the letter that I think it was in the email that went out to everybody, but you know, how do we, you know, I mean, we've checked the references. I know you said we've used them in the past, so we know that their quality is decent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ESI is a big company. They're like $100 million a year company.
Yeah.
You know, you'll see them do a lot of smaller projects, but you know, they do these. We got really good reviews. They did 2 projects for Lathrup. I think it was 12 and 16 paving program. They did fine. I'll be honest, Bruce and everyone else. I mean, I sure as heck would have a hard time saying you should go to 1.4 million over a 1.167 million.
Right.
That's a hard justification. And, you know, Proline's done a lot of your projects. So.
Yeah, and I know ASI is a reputable company, but I just wanted to make sure, because I know, I remember the town halls, people were, you know, that was a big issue for people. How do we know that the contractor that we choose is going to be quality? And
yeah,
I got a question from Joe here. Are the contractors required to have their insurances updated and clearances for taxes possibly owed for Lathrup, to Lathrup?
I'm not sure what that exactly means. They are required to have insurance, so we'll have to be up to date. I'm not sure what it means by owed to Lathrup Village. I think Joe's pulling on some of her City of Detroit experience.
City of Detroit does not allow vendors to bid if they owe taxes. Is that city taxes, Joe? Okay, so we don't have city taxes, so.
Yeah, I mean, none of them are based in Lathrup Village.
Yeah, none of them have offices in Lathrup, Joe.
All right, if we're good, I'm going to flip to the next one here. So this is our recommendation to the city council and to Cheryl. I kind of wanted to go over this. So the total amount of bid was 1.167 million. The DPW parking lot cost came in at 45,406. Santa Barbara, the concrete portion was 79,000. And the 7 non-compliant culverts were 17,000. So when you subtract these items that will be reimbursed to the bond issue, the total amount going to the paving bond issue is 1,025,000.
That's great.
Now this number will change. Like I said, we pay, you know, the contractor is the contract is a work item based contract. So if they put in more asphalt, you know, in accordance with the spec, this number may go up. Every one of them work items is going to have a different unit at the end of the day than what they bid. So I hope that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
And then I came up with, this is about the amount we had budgeted, 1.428 million.
Yep.
So, you know, they come in really good. And, you know, hopefully at the end of the day, we'll be able to pave more streets. So I get a little worried about saying that because you never know what next year's price is.
Right. Or what we might, or any obstacles that we may come across.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we're going to run into scope issues. Yeah. But the things that in the future that are going to affect us a little bit is all the work that the state's going to be putting out if they ever get to fixing their roads. Because there's going to be less competition and these prices typically go up. All right, I got one more quick slide, and this is a really big one. So these are, this is how I figured out every cost. So these were all the work items. These are the planned units. So the thing for as directed, we put as directed items in there to cover any potential overages. So if everything was perfect on these plans, we'd only do 738 square yards of pavement removal, but we threw in an extra 40 square yards. Maybe we got another driveway to do or something. So as directed are items we may need, like subgrade undercutting. We don't know if we're going to need any or not. So we put in 100 cubic yards of each kind. So we have a total of 200 cubic yards of undercutting. This is the aggregate. Go ahead, Bruce.
So basically what you're saying is you in the numbers that you guys came up with, you included some leeway, I guess.
We built in some potential overages and work items that we may or may not need.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. You know, we threw in like an extra 80 feet of culverts. So, you know, at the end of the day, them as directed items are $56,000, which is included in that 1.16 million. Let's hope we don't need this, then you'll be under $56,000 more.
Yeah.
You know, like sprinkler pipe, you know, we threw in 150 feet. We don't know how many sprinklers we're going to run into. So, you know, these are just as directed estimated items. We put in a bunch of extra restoration in case we find some areas. that need to be landscaped, maybe to, you know, maybe there's a sidewalk area that's holding water, and by draining or grading a little bit of that green belt down to the ditch, we can get rid of that water. So. And then, so these are each street. This is the DPW. One more quick thing. So is what this is the road repair method C. So this is the mill and overlay. We budgeted about $87 per foot. And the actual cost came in at $60. So we're quite a bit under on type C, and every type C.
Your estimated actual cost, or the actual cost from the bidders?
This estimated cost is what we had in the bond issue of $87 per foot.
Got it.
So what I did is I took out the engineering and I just said construction and contingency cost was $87 per foot. The contractor, through all these work items, the cost came in at about $60 a foot. Type B, which is the machine grading, came in at about $101 on this street, and we budgeted $134. So I kind of found that interesting. You know, a lot of the type C's were all around $60 to $65. Type B's were, you know, $90 to $100. And then we got the type A's, which are the bigger streets with excavation, were all around $120 to $140 a foot. So. And then we calculated out, this is the Santa Barbara concrete portion. So this is where I came up with the 79,000. And then this is each of the culverts. So 19064 Cambridge, estimated cost is going to be $2,800. Most of the culverts were about, right around 2,000 to 20, looks like 2,800. This one's the Avila approach for the alley. I just threw that in there to see what that cost was. So, and that's all I had. I know it probably took more time than I thought, but.
No, but it's interesting. It's good to see.
Are those amounts that each one of the companies bid, are those public record?
Yeah.
So they can.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I have all them bids at my office, but I scanned them all and I sent everyone to Yvette, because if she gets FOIA, then she has them. And you know, the bid tab, I posted this bid tab back on the city's bidding website. So yeah, it is public record.
Joe said that's the detailed cost breakdown we used to create the payment estimates.
No, the payment estimates, like I said, we'll do every month for all the work that they've done in that month. It will be based off the quantities and the unit prices that they bid. So, you know, the month that they go out there and they excavate Santa Barbara, they'll have a pay estimate that month that'll include that $40,000.
I think she's typing. We used that last sheet you showed us as a base for cost, quantity, completion.
No, I used that sheet here. I just wanted to see what each street cost.
Oh,
that's all.
Sorry,
that
she was saying the city of Detroit uses that last sheet you showed us as a base for cost or quantity completion. There we go. I'm getting good at this, Joe.
Yeah, this is just my sheet. It's even got my name on it. I never sent this to Bruce. I didn't want him to have too much information.
That's dangerous.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing if that's good. Well, nobody's sleeping, so that's good.
No. All right. Questions, concerns, thoughts? Like I said, I just really wanted this meeting just so, it's been a while since we met, and I wanted to just update you on, all Scott's stuff, as well as updated, some of the things that changed and where we are on the various stages of the projects. But, the city administration is moving full force on this, so they're keeping busy, and Cheryl's head hasn't popped off yet, so that's good. But yeah, all the various projects are moving forward. We've been meeting behind the scenes, and so I just wanted to kind of update you guys and make sure you guys were in the loop. So probably the next time that we'll meet, I'm thinking we'll probably be after Scott and I have a chance to kind of drive the next set of streets and start working on that, and then we'll bring the team in for input, and so that we can make another recommendation to city council as to what the year 2 streets should be, and probably even the year three streets. So anything else? Any comments from anybody else?
Yeah, just scheduling wise, Bruce, boy, the quicker we can figure out streets, the better. I had a conversation with Consumers Energy. They're getting ready to do a lot of work in Lathrup.
Yeah.
I'd like to let them know, when we're going to be doing the remainder of the streets, so they can try to plan that.
Yeah, and the idea, and I hopefully we're still on target with this, but the idea was that the Cambridge SAD we were going to have at the April council meeting. So and they actually, I should mention this because I don't think the rest of the team knows this is. The idea is that with Cambridge is the one street that we picked that has an extensive ditching project with a special assessment that we had planned to do this year. And as you remember, we couldn't do it because Consumers has a gas line that's in the way, and they're going to move it once we approve the SAD. So we decided to continue to move forward this year with the SAD. It wouldn't get on their taxes until a year from July. And we wouldn't start the work until next year, but we're moving forward to get that SAD approved this year. Because we need that to get, then that has to happen for Consumers to move that line. So. All right, well, this was a long one. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Appreciate it. And I will be in touch as things filter up, and just through email, and probably expect another meeting sometime in March. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.